Tension on Capitol Hill today. The House of Representatives actually canceled today's session, and the Senate may be forced to do the same. There are worries about more violence from protesters there. Let's check in with our national correspondent, Logan Raddick, on Capitol Hill, right at the Capitol. He has the latest. Logan.
Hey, good afternoon. The House of Representatives canceled its session today following a warning from the Capitol Police and other intelligence agencies that a, quote, identified militia group was presenting a threat today here on Capitol Hill. But ever since the riot on January 6th, the security has been incredibly tight here. And as you can see behind me, there's a wall in front of the Capitol building. And right now we're also inside a wall surrounding the Capitol complex. It's about as secure as it can possibly get. The Capitol complex remains one of the most tightly guarded locations in the country after it was overrun by rioters just under 2 months ago. There's fencing surrounding the entire complex with office buildings walled off, with additional barriers inside the main fence protecting the Capitol building and the Supreme Court. Along with the 12-foot fence topped with razor wire, multiple armed National Guardsmen and police officers are stationed at every checkpoint. And then to get inside the building, you have to pass more officers, show your credentials, and get through a metal detector. Now, while the House won't be meeting today, it already approved a version of the coronavirus relief bill. Members will likely have to vote again if the Senate approves changes in the coming days. Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz and his Republican colleagues say this bill barely targets coronavirus-related items.
And it's a total joke. It does almost anything except respond to the coronavirus. It spends hundreds of millions of dollars with globalist organizations. It even spends money here at home on Native American language preservation. I guess those could be useful things, but they don't belong in the coronavirus response. And the whole deal is they're trying to pass these bills so that they can subsidize the pathology of lockdowns. There is no subsidy that is better than freedom for our people. That's what we hope are proven in Florida.
The bill as passed by the House includes $1,400 direct payments to most Americans, plus $400 a week in unemployment benefits, while expanding the child tax credit. But they may have to vote again if the Senate makes changes to the legislation, which could very well happen. Oklahoma Senator James Lankford says nobody has been able to read the proposed bill thoroughly, and that he will join 13 Republican colleagues in forcing the Senate clerks to read it aloud on the Senate floor.
Then it's gone through radical changes on the Senate side. We hear it has at least. They wanted to drop a text that no one has seen on either side of the aisle, begin debate and amending immediately, and try to get it passed before anyone can see it. We're slowing it down, thanks to Ron Johnson for that, to be able to go through the process and say, let's give this thing some daylight and see if that'll have some effect.
Senate Republican Whip John Thune of South Dakota says it could take about 10 hours to read the entire bill on the floor. And there's another controversial measure that just passed through the House last night. It's called H.R. 1, also known as the For the People Act, and it would automatically register people to vote, as well as limit states' authorities to remove people from voter rolls. Now, as for the security here on Capitol Hill, we know the House is not in session. Some representatives are still in their offices doing work. Senators are here on the Hill, but it's a lot quieter today, given this so-called threat that the Capitol Police have warned about. Back to you.
All right. Thank you, Logan. Well, as Logan was just mentioning, House Democrats are pushing that H.R. 1 bill that's aimed at overhauling the nation's election laws. Many Republicans, though, fear that this bill will disenfranchise American voters as it undermines election integrity, they say. Our next guest, Florida Congresswoman Kat Cammack, is one of those Republicans. Take a look at what she had to say regarding the H.R. 1 bill.
This bill will allow 16-year-olds to vote, give $25 vouchers to individuals to donate to the candidate of their choice, redefines free speech, triggers universal mail-in ballots, creates an election czar, and strips voter ID requirements, and so much more. This bill jeopardizes the future of Americans' freedoms of speech with new requirements for public disclosure of support of political campaigns and candidates. Mr. Speaker, we cannot claim to be protecting the rights and freedoms enshrined in our Constitution when the For the People Act, more aptly named the For the Politicians Act, is under consideration.
And joining us now to discuss is Congresswoman Kat Cammack herself. Thank you so much for joining us. Let us know what is your primary concern. I know amongst the list that you just gave there on the floor, you're also saying that this basically is just a power grab from the top down.
Absolutely. And thanks for having me on this afternoon. You're right. It is pretty quiet up here on Capitol Hill, but it is. This is just a top-down power grab. Look, this is H.R. 1. I'm sitting in my office right now. This is the bill that no one has read. God knows what is tucked into this monstrosity. And if you can't read a bill, you shouldn't vote on it. And I guarantee you that my colleagues on the left have not read this bill. It's garbage. And the thing that I tell people who are in favor of this is if the Democrats have been so concerned about election integrity, why didn't they pursue this last Congress? And then don't we all recall during November and December where they said this was the best, most secure election that they've ever seen in their lifetime? Well, then why is H.R. 1 their top priority? Why all of a sudden the push for this new reform? And I like to tell people this 6-to-1 match that we're seeing of small dollar donations that taxpayers and corporations will be footing the bill for. Let me just paint this picture. AOC posts up some explosive video, name calling everybody a racist, you name it. She raises $1 million. Guess what? We're on the hook for the other $6 million. That's right. She will raise $6 million because of the 6-to-1 match, because the majority of her donations are small dollar donations. This is ludicrous. We are absolutely losing our constitutional republic. And this H.R. 1 is what the Democrats have as their top priority. This cannot stand. This is dangerous. This undermines our Constitution. It undermines our republic. We need the Senate to fight this. And I guarantee you, Americans, when they find out what's in this bill, it is going to terrify them.
Okay, Congresswoman, we wanted to address some comments you made, some very passionate words you had on the House floor regarding H.R. 1280, otherwise known as the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. Now, the House passed the bill, just the House, not the Senate. Let's take a look at some of what you had to say regarding that bill.
Now, as a member of the first responder family, I can say definitively on behalf of our officers that there is absolutely nothing that a good cop hates more than a bad cop. And as the wife of a first responder, this issue could not be more personal to me. My husband serves our local community as a firefighter and a SWAT medic for our local sheriff's department. And next to me here today, you see one of his SWAT vests. This is the same vest that he wore for 14 hours while on a massive manhunt for a man who had just been released from prison who promptly raped and killed his girlfriend. It is the same vest that he wore while responding to a man who had barricaded himself with weapons, threatening to kill his own children. These are just some of the scenes that this vest and my husband has seen, like so many of our LEOs. But the real threat here is not the dangerous situations that my husband has seen in protecting his community. It is the fact that this bill, and by extension you, Mr. Speaker, want to take this vest off my husband's back. Because yes, what this bill does is take this kind of equipment off the backs of our men and women in uniform.
Congresswoman, very passionate words. I think they connect to a lot of people because you're living the reality, not something that's a numbers thing. The other thing you went on and said is you agree there needs to be some get rid of the bad cops. You think there should be some schooling on how to do your job properly if you are a police officer. So why is it that there's such an extreme reaction with something like 1280?
You know, this bill is just an attempt to defund the police. And you saw it last night in my speech. Obviously, this is very personal to me. It's very personal to our LEOs, to the first responder family, and the spouses that worry all night long whether or not their spouse is going to make it back. This bill is just an attempt to cut and undermine our departments. They talk about chokeholds in the state of Florida. Chokeholds aren't employed. They have actually been banned. Prior to this bill, I sat down with all of my sheriffs, all of my police chiefs, and they read this bill with me in shock and horror at what it would do, getting rid of qualified immunity, undercutting all the grants, giving the grant money that goes towards the protective equipment like that vest to NAACP, to citizen advisory boards. This is garbage. This is dangerous. And it stands to reason that if you want better protection and better trained police, you fully fund them. Yeah. What the thing and where we defund the police. And I was gavelled down before I had an opportunity to finish my speech. Yeah. I was 15 seconds away from finishing. And what I was challenged my colleagues to that were staring at me with daggers as I was delivering this speech was, have you done a ride-along? Have you gone into the sim units at your local police academy? Because if you haven't, you have no business voting on this bill. And so I was challenging every single one of my colleagues who voted in favor of that bill, and that challenge stands today. Come on a ride along with me. Let's have a cup of coffee. Let's have this discussion, because this is the most important discussion right now. If we are willing to undermine the people in our communities that are fighting day and night to uphold law and order, what are we doing here?
Congresswoman, thank you so
Great
much. Very strong arguments for both of these bills, and we appreciate you joining us to give us the passion that you have on this. These are not just words on 800 pages, right? These are real laws that affect people. So thank you so much. All right. President Joe Biden's nominee for America's next Attorney General, Merrick Garland, has hit another roadblock on his way to confirmation. This comes after his refusal to answer whether illegally entering the country should be a crime. Let's check in with our own White House correspondent, Emerald Robinson, for the latest out of Washington, D.C. Emerald.
Hi, Bob. There's one senator in particular, Senator Tom Cotton, who is holding up the confirmation of Merrick Garland. Now, as you said, it's in regards to some answers he rather didn't give during his confirmation hearing. However, Tom Cotton put out a statement via Twitter saying why he was doing this, saying that the Senate needs the time to debate the issues, just as Democrats wanted to do with Attorney General William Barr. He also said that there wasn't going to be one standard for Trump's nominees and then a different one now for Biden's nominees. He also took issue with the fact that Garland refused to answer whether he thought that if an illegal alien assaulted a U.S. citizen and was ordered to be deported by a court, whether or not they should actually be deported. Now, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki was just asked about these confirmations processes in the White House briefing a few minutes ago. She said they're still very focused on getting Garland confirmed. However, she was also asked more about immigration. Remember yesterday we talked about the story down in Brownsville, Texas, where migrants who are part of the Remain in Mexico policy are being released. Some of those who have been tested for COVID have tested positive, but are being released anyway. And some of them, many of them, are continuing to travel via bus and other forms of transportation further into the United States. Now, Psaki tried to suggest that this wasn't true, but there's been quite a bit of reporting on it. Brownsville town officials have confirmed that they've had positive COVID tests for migrants, which they're having to perform themselves. Psaki also spoke about the fact that it's up to state and local officials to conduct these tests, suggesting that there's no responsibility of the federal government, even though it's Biden's policies that are ensuring that these migrants are released into the United States. There's also more backlash as the migrants continue to surge at the border. Today, Immigration and Customs Enforcement told their staff that this year there will be more migrant families with minor children coming to the border than there has been in some 20 years. Because of that, the Biden administration is looking at converting their facilities in South Texas into rapid processing facilities, sort of a la Ellis Island. They're even considering renting some hotels to convert into rapid processing centers. There's a couple of congressmen, that's Andy Biggs, I think you're going to have him on the show later, and Brian Babin, who are calling on the DH Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas to come give them a briefing on what's going on at the southern border and why, given all that we're learning this week about the surge in migrants, why he continues to say it's not a crisis. Bob, Heather.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Emerald. And we'll certainly ask him about that. Well,
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, where real news for real people.